Hey, what's going on guys, it's Dubs here, welcome back to another video, and in this video I'm basically going to explain to you guys the setup side of drifting. So, I went and asked on Facebook and Twitter, what would you guys like to see for a new video, and some people said that they were having trouble setting up their cars for drifting. Now, I've already done a drifting tutorial where I basically show you guys taking the car out on the track, how to basically get your car into the corner, how to exit the corner, how to keep your car going sideways and stuff like that. So if you guys want to watch that video, the link will be down in the description box below, and there's also an annotation on the screen that you can click and it'll be taking you over to that video. But for this video, I'm basically going to show you guys, or explain to you guys, just the setup part of it. So how to set up your car for drifting, how to be able to, go sideways and keep your car sideways, from the setup side of things. So like how to set up your suspension to be able to do all that stuff, and how to set up your dampers, your transmission and all that. So in this video I'm going to explain all of that to you. First of all, we obviously start off with the tires, and the tires have to be comfort hard. They have to be the slippiest that you can, because that's probably the easiest tires that you can go around with and actually drift with. So I recommend going around with comfort hard tires. Now I know people are going to disagree with me on some things in this video, and that's because they have their own setup. I'm going to show you guys my setup, how I drift, and how I do all my videos with, and this is from my perspective, or from my point of view. Next thing, skip the brakes, go ahead into the suspension, and I'll show you guys the fully customizable kit, which is what you should pretty much buy for every single car that you decide to tune for drifting. Now, here we go. I'll start off from the left side. The right height adjustment, I suggest that you bring this down all the way. Depending on what car you drive, and depending on what type of drifting you are willing to do. But if you're pretty much starting out how to drift, and you're just learning, I suggest that you bring your right height all the way down. And the lower the center of gravity, the better for your car. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, if you go over to the spring rate, I usually like to stiffen the front up a little bit more than the back. I like to leave the back, I like to leave a little bit of play in the back, basically. So the front is usually a little bit stiffer than the back. I usually like to leave a little bit of, I don't want to bring it all the way up, because I don't want the suspension to be completely stiff. I like to leave a little bit of, play, I guess, in the suspension. And that also coincides with this, which is dampers. So the extension and the compression of the dampers. Now, the extension of the dampers basically means that, let's say your car is going sideways and your car sort of leans over to one side. If you're going around the right-hand corner, that means the dampers on the right side of your car will extend, and the ones on the left side will compress. So basically, the compression means that, your car will basically push down onto the wheel, and how much of that would you want to basically let happen? And the same with the opposite side, how much extension from the dampers would you want to see that happen? I usually like to keep these pretty loose, because I like to have my car, when it's going sideways, I like to have a little bit of play in the suspension. That's why I leave the spring rate and basically just a little bit off the end, because when I want to throw my car around in the corner and I want to be continuously keeping my car drifting, I like to leave these pretty loose, because I want to have the ability to be able to throw my car around without actually having to use my handbrake or stuff like that. So this is a lot easier to get your car to do some like chain drifts, and continuously keeping it sideways. Anti-roll bars do pretty much the exact same thing. The lower they are, the easier you can roll the car around, and that's pretty much it. Now if you go over to the camber, basically the less camber, the flatter the wheel is on the ground. The more camber, you're angling the wheel on the towards the inside, the top of the wheel towards the inside. That means it'll have less of the wheel touching the road. I usually like to keep more on the front than the back. Usually around 2 to about 3.5 is where I usually go. For the front. The back, I usually go from 1.5 to about 2.5. Now this depends on what type of car you're driving. I can't give you sort of an exact number here, because most of the cars are different, and I can't basically tell you guys how to set up this unless you take the car on the track. Usually when you guys see me do my Project Drifting series, I usually come back and I change the toe and the camber and stuff like that, depending on how the car drives, and that's pretty much it. You have to try to take the car on the track and see what it drives like before that happens. The less the wheel is touching off the road, the more the car slides. So obviously if you put the thing to 10, you won't have any grip in the back wheels, so you're gonna need a lot of grip when you're driving around normally. And then when you just decide to go sideways, you should have just the perfect amount of spin from the back wheels. So I think For this car, 2.1, 2.2, something similar to that is perfectly fine. In the front wheels, I only want these to kind of steer, but I don't want them to be very restrained. You know, like if I put these on 0, basically then I can't, you know, add a lot of counter steering to the car, because then, you know, it'll basically just end up steering the opposite direction. You know, it'll have too much grip, so that's why I put camber on this, because then there's less grip. Now, toe angle. For the back, I use positive toe. I just leave it on the way it is as standard, 0.2. And on the back, I put negative toe, which is minus 0.10. And, okay, so the toe here, if I put positive toe, that means that your car is going to go straight, right? It's going to help the car to go completely straight. That's why the back wheels are like this. I want them to stay as straight as possible. But for the front wheels, I want these to be sort of, you know, when I turn left and right, I don't want the car to stay completely straight. Now, if you use positive toe, you will help the car go straight. If you use negative toe, you'll help the car go sideways a lot easier as well. So that will help the steering when you're turning left and right. When you want to enter a corner and you accelerate, it's easier for your car to end up steering into that corner and to counter steer as well. So the toe and the camber kind of help each other out, which is what you need to do to help your car to steer and counter steer and stuff like that. So that's done with the suspension. I'm going to explain these to you guys. Body and chassis, engine, intake system, exhaust, turbo kits. You pretty much buy whatever you want here. I suggest buying like the most expensive thing. On the turbo, it depends, because sometimes if you buy the higher RPM turbo, you don't get the highest amount of horsepower. Sometimes you have to buy like the supercharger, you get the more horsepower. So basically it depends on the way it is. When you take the car on the track, you have to basically realize when there's too much power or there isn't enough power. For some of the cars that you go around driving in, let's say like a Viper or a Corvette, you can add a lot of power, so you end up having a car with like 600, 700, 800 horsepower, and that's just way too much power for some of the cars to be able to handle, you know, on the wheels. So basically take the power off, go into your engine and into your power limiter, and basically detune the car like this, and just drive it around for a while and see what it drives like. And you will definitely notice when there's too much power, because your car will end up spinning a lot. And you know, it's not usually just the suspension's fault. It usually, you know, comes up to the power. So yeah, if I go into the drivetrain, I'll explain to you guys the LSD. Basically, by the twin clutch plate, semi-racing flywheel, and carbon propeller shaft, those help with the engine response and the gearing response. Like when you change gear and whatever, that'll change a lot faster. Now, if you go into the fully customizable LSD, now here for the initial torque, I usually leave it all the way to the back at 5, 6, or 7. Usually something very, very low. The lower the initial torque, the more oversteer you have. So basically, when you go around in a corner and you accelerate, you know, the initial torque, the lower it is, basically, the more oversteer you get. The acceleration sensitivity, again, the lower it is, the more oversteer you get. Now, this usually, I keep it on about 20 to 25. The reason why I do this is because it kind of helps when you're drifting, but usually when you're kind of, you know, when you're oversteering and you want to counter steer, you know, you want to keep this going sideways by using the acceleration sensitivity, which helps with your throttle response and all that stuff. Braking sensitivity, I usually leave that on, you know, unchanged, or if I do change it, I change it down to like 20 or something like that. Braking, I only use when I'm going like slightly too fast on a corner, and usually I only brake, you know, just so I can slow down before the corner. I never actually brake when I'm drifting. You'll find me doing it sometimes when I'm like drifting in a corner, and then the output of the corner is a little bit tighter, so I do brake a little bit, but it doesn't really make a difference in the LSD. You know, adjusting your braking sensitivity. So I usually just leave it the way it is, standard. Now, in the fully customizable transmission, which is what you should buy, here is a little bit easier for you guys to know this. What you should do is this differs on every track. Like, it depends what track you drive on, and that's why you should change your transmission to. Usually what I do is I don't mess around with the gears too much. Sometimes when you shift from like second to third gear, you usually get a bit of lag. So like when you go from second to third gear and you're into a corner, you get a bit of lag until it changes. So you can mess around with the gear ratios. The higher you put this, the shorter the gear. The lower you put it, the longer the gear. So like, you know, you can accelerate. If you like bring this down to all the way to 2.7, you can basically accelerate much more in second gear. So like, let's say instead of accelerating from 100 kilometers per hour to 150, if you bring this all the way down, you'll accelerate from like 100 kilometers per hour to like 180. Okay, you understand what I mean? And then if you bring it up, it'll basically shorten that distance. Now, I usually mess around with the max speed because this usually messes with all of the gears altogether. Now, for the Suzuka circuit that I was driving on here, I usually just left this on 260 because it kind of helps me out on the majority of the corners to be able to take them all in 4th and 5th gear. So again, this depends on the track that you're driving on, and it also depends on the amount of power that you want to put into the wheels, in the corners and whatever. So for the Suzuka East Course track, I used 260 kilometers per hour after this was fully tuned. So that's pretty much it. I'll show you guys a really clean lap of Suzuka East that I've done with this car. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the little lap at the end. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I will try my best to answer them. And that's about it for me. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.